Today, I'm going to talk about the politics of strategic survival and influence, values and ideologies with regard to Iran and Israel, and the crisis that's at the moment taking place in West Asia. Ideology as a concept does not mean an idea or a set of ideas. Instead is a set of dogmatic beliefs against all else that can and should be applied all of the time and all of the place. It is by nature a destructive force. Religion is not intrinsically an ideology, but it can be instrumentalized as an ideology and be used for political purposes. But statehood is not rooted in ideology. Statehood came out in Europe as a result of the 30-year-old war between religious wars that took place in Europe. And it's rooted in other concepts. In fact, if anything, statehood limited the influence of religion in the affairs of the people, at least outside the boundaries of what then they formed as the Holy Roman Empire. This is all in mid-17th century. But when you want to use the state to pursue ideological or religious purposes, which has been turned into an ideology, it doesn't usually work. The Soviet Union is a very good example that when you use statehood for the purpose of advancing ideological goals, it fails. We have seen in the more recent times, since Sudan failed miserably, Afghanistan failed, is failing, Iran has failed and is failing in delivering what we even themselves want to state as their goals. Because it's like you are taking a Ferrari, let's say, to take it to very rugged terrain and want to where a very difficult road where you need to take a very different type of vehicle, maybe a four-wheel drive or something like that. Its status in the same way is not suited to deliver ideological goals. Iran since 1979 has been an ideological state, wants to destroy Israel. It chants death to America or at times to other countries. And in its current phase of conflict with Israel, Iran is using proxy groups, Hezbollah, Houthis, Hashd al-Sha'bi, and even though Hamas and Islamic Jihad are Sunni groups and they're not religiously affiliated to Iran, but ideologically they are. Iran, according to US, Iran gave over $700 million to Hezbollah in 2020. And according to some other reports, this is the kind of regular sum that Iran offers Hezbollah. between 2012, 2020, which is 8 years, allegedly Iran gave over $16 billion to keep Assad regime in Syria in power. And generally, it is estimated that roughly Iran spends about $16 billion a year to sponsor these groups. You know, they are located in, I think, 7 countries or 6 countries, Bahrain, Iraq, Yemen, Lebanon, Syria. And these, of course, the Palestinian territories as well. Now, the current phase that Iran and Israel, well, Israel initially with Hamas, now with Hezbollah, and we had also faced a direct, very limited direct conflict when Iran attacked Israel, and Israel, in response to Israeli attack on Iranian consulate, but that was very short-lived. But through proxies, this has been going on in its current phase since 7th of October of 2023. I should also say that in the current phase, Israel is also paying for its sins, so to speak. If you remember when Hamas took over Gaza after the evacuation of Gaza by Ariel Sharon, at the time the Prime Minister of Israel, and Hamas took over by a military takeover. It seems the idea was in the minds of some Israeli policymakers that by allowing Hamas to become a strong force and government in so-called government in Gaza, the Palestinian front will be divided, and therefore it will be much easier for Israel to deal with the dispute and the problem with Palestinians. And based on the fact that they can always argue, well, Palestinians are divided amongst themselves, and therefore discussing and coming to any conclusion with any one of them is not obviously something one wants to achieve, but rather a holistic. And as Hamas does not recognize Israel, therefore it is impossible to negotiate with Hamas, so they would claim. This dividing the Palestinian front may have been useful to Israeli goals, as I just explained, but now it has come to haunt them. Please bear in mind also one difference between security and peace. Security is not necessarily synonymous with peace. Peace in its classic context means silence of the guns. In its more modern version, it refers to much broader spectrum, in the sense that peace also includes economy, culture, and other areas, not just military. However, security may not always be achieved through peace. As a very simple example, perhaps too simple an example, but it does make the point. in the Second World War, they could have accepted what Hitler was claiming and allowing Hitler to do what it wanted, so they would have peace. But the world did not accept that. The world went to war with Hitler because they wanted to have security, long-term security, security in the sense that of being able to enjoy peace in its broadest interpretation, enjoying economic, cultural rights that all societies and all human beings are entitled to. Now, there is the belief among some that some Israeli leaders used to believe that peace with the Arabs, with the Arab neighbors, does not necessarily lead to security for Israel. They back up they support their argument by saying that in 1967, well, we were at peace, but the Nasser was trying to attack us. In 74, we were at peace, but then we were attacked. Therefore, whenever we have peace, our Arab neighbors get up to something which is not peace-like, and we pay for it. So peace with our Arab neighbors does not necessarily mean security for us. On the contrary, some of those leaders argued that it is the absence of peace and this state of limbo, no peace, no war, which keeps our neighbors on their toes and may help us achieve a degree of security. Well, we all hope that the mindset has now changed and peace and security are viewed in very similar fashion by the regional leaders, including Israel. The Abraham Accord that happened with Israel and some of the Arab states was going to be extended and include also Saudi Arabia, but was did not proceed because of the Hamas attack on Israel on 7th of October last year, which was probably one of the main goals of the attack, not to allow establishment of diplomatic relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Excuse me. But if that now, if the word is there are discussions on the way that may lead to such an outcome now, that may somewhat forfeit the goal that was originally in the minds of Hamas leaders. One point that needs to be also mentioned here, and of particular importance, is that why do we have these semi-state or non-state groups in different countries in the region? We have in Afghanistan, we had the Al-Qaeda, then we had the ISIS, then we have the Houthis in Yemen, we have Hezbollah, we have Hashd al-Shaabi in Iraq. Now, I want to mention one important point in this regard, and that is tribal countries are difficult to be ruled cohesively in a way that a Western state, non-tribal state, is governed. in tribal societies, the first loyalty is to the tribe. Saddam came from Tikrit. The Libyan leader came from a tribe, now I forgot the name. In Yemen, we have Houthis. Even Saudi Arabia, I mean, the country is named after the tribe, the Saudi tribe, that were the founders of the country. There is difficulty when you want to import from the West into a traditional tribal religious society the concept of statehood as it is understood and practiced in the West. In its current format, statehood in the West is based on nationalism, rationalism, liberalism, secularism, and so on. Well, these columns, these pillars of statehood, are not present in every society in West Asia or North Africa. The arch enemy of statehood, so to speak, if I may use the phrase, is tribalism. Always the loyalty to the tribe, if not greater, it is equal to the loyalty to the state. In many ways, the loyalty to the tribe supersedes the loyalty to the state. Because in these societies, you have the element of tribalism and you have the element of religiosity. That is the practice of appearing to be religious and conforming to the set of rituals that testify, validate your claim to be religious. These two elements, tribalism and religiosity, they are stronger than the sense of secularism and rationalism and liberalism, and so on. And that is why in Egypt, which is not tribal, we see that when, after what was referred to at the time the Arab Spring, and the Muslim Brotherhood came to power, the Egyptian army, which is a nationalist army, which we really don't have in any other, I think, as such, Arab country probably like the Egyptian army. It took over and came to power, and now the country is a secular country. So this question of tribalism is of particular importance, and that had to be borne in mind when we discuss this question of Western style of democracy in West Asia, or what is referred to as the Middle East. By the way, it does not mean that because the societies in this part of the world may not be the same as the societies in the West, and therefore not suited at the moment to practice governance in the way that is practiced in the West. It does not mean they are of lower quality. Allow me to illustrate, to elaborate on that with an example. We all have different blood types. And usually, if the bloods are not compatible blood types and they are transfused, blood of one person is given to another when there is no match, it can be dangerous and maybe in fact, cause the demise of some people, patients. Now, people having different blood types doesn't make them better or worse than one another. It's just different. Now, in these societies, freedom, which is like the blood of human intellectual and spiritual survival and advancement, that freedom, like the blood in our physical body, which is essential for our survival and for our living, that freedom is expressed in different ways through their traditions. Now, I don't want to get into the specifics of how that freedom is particularly expressed, like the tradition of Bay'ah in many of these tribal countries. But suffice it to say that they are practiced differently. And if the ways of expression of freedom are different, it does not necessarily mean it is worse or better. Of course, this is no justification for dictatorship, for autocracy, for abuse of human rights, for atrocities that happen sadly in many of these regional countries. But the argument stands that you can practice your freedom and express it through a way that is compatible to your tradition and which may be different from the ways of expression in Western style of democracies. That's a point that we have to bear in mind. I thank you very much for your attention.